everybody, and welcome to our webinar on Cambridge IGCSE and O-Level Business. I'm Laura Rogers from Cambridge University Press and Assessment, and I'll be hosting this webinar for our speakers today. Thank you so much for joining us. So Jen, if we could move on to the next slide, I'm going to introduce the webinar team for today and just tell you what each of us will be talking about. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Sally Johnston, who is a development manager in our products and services team, and will be taking us through all of the key changes to the Cambridge IGCSE and O-Level business syllabuses. Julia Fusey is commissioning editor for our published teaching and learning resources and will be providing an overview of the new supporting resources available for business, including the textbooks and school support hub materials. For our Insights from our Authors segment, we are delighted to have Leanne Burslem-Curl with us today. Leanne started teaching in 2011 and has been head of department at a successful school in the northwest of England since 2016. She's also an examiner and author of our Coursebook and digital teachers resource. We would also like to mention Mehdi Houghton, who unfortunately cannot join us for the session today, but has contributed in-depth expertise to the content that we're about to see. Mehdi has a background in finance and teaching and is now an education consultant, examiner, and author of the Coursebook resource. And finally, my colleague Jennifer Wade and myself are also part of the international education team here at Cambridge University Press and Assessment. I'll be hosting the webinar and Jen will be on hand to support throughout the session as well. So that's the end of the introduction, and now going to hand over to Sally to get things started with an overview of the key changes to the syllabus and what they will mean for you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for the introduction, Laura, that's been great. Can I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to be talking about just a general overview of the changes of business. So business, as you can see from this first slide, we've changed the name from business studies to business, and the three codes rather. So business with the IGCSE is 0264, and that will be the first assessment in March 2027, as that will be in India. And the Cambridge IGCSE 91 business 0774, that's going to be first assessment in June 2027, and the O-Level business 7081 will be assessed in June 2027 as well. So the headline changes for this, as you can see already, are the change in the business type, the syllabus title and codes. We've also modernised the subject content, so it includes much more sort of themes about new technology. We've added the counting formula and ratio, which I'll be talking about this as a rationale a little bit more detail. And we've also given much greater clarity to the assessment objectives, which I hope you'll all find much better than they have been. The aims we've reworded for clarity. So we've put in there to inspire for further study in business. And we've also aligned these to IGCSE accounting and IGCSE economics as well. This fits also in the Cambridge sort of pathway for progression. So the IGCSE will progress and the O-Level will progress into the international AS and A-Level for business. The change in name obviously aligns with the AS and A-Level business as well, because they changed their name a few years ago. And also the use of the accounting formula and ratios and new terminology, that also aligns with the A-Level business as well. And also the accounting we align with the accounting for the ratios as well. Okay, can I have next slide, please, Jennifer? Okay, so the key changes for the syllabus. We've mentioned already the change in name. We felt that this just gave a lot better alignment towards the Cambridge AS and A-Level business. So that's like a nice, good improvement. Unfortunately, because we changed the name, we had to change the codes as well. So those are the new codes that you'll need to familiarise yourself with. Aims These better reflect the content. They inspire, obviously, a lot more further study into business, so inspiring people to students to then go on to do AS and A level, and obviously align much more with IGCSE accounting and economics. You'll also notice that we have a small introductory explanation for each topic. This provides a little bit more detail and a little bit more clarity for teachers, so they can have an overview of each topic of what's going to be what plans to be taught, and this aids with planning and sequencing of the teaching as well. Okay, next slide, please, Jennifer. Thank you. So key changes and subject for the subject content. So as I've mentioned already, we have done some modernisation to include new themes of technology. We've also included a little bit more on sustainability as well, which is obviously one of our main priorities at Cambridge. We've got 2 new topic headings, which are technology and production of goods and services, and 4.3, which is sustainable production of goods and services. So this has been sort of a little bit merged with some other sort of content as well. So this has been done to future-proof the syllabus and to make it much more current, and to include more information on new digital technologies, and also obviously with sustainability as well. You'll see we've got new examples to reflect the changing world and enhances students' understanding. So we've got things like online methods of research. We've updated methods of e-commerce like mobile phone and internet banking and online shopping, and also things like online ticketing. We all do this more often than we used to, especially when the previous syllabus was out. And also digital methods of communications being included in the marketing. So these examples are much more relevant to the current world and the business world that we're involved in now. We've also included greater level of detail to help teachers understand the scope of the content, with simplified wording for greater accessibility. Some content has been reordered in comparison to the previous syllabus, but this we hope will improve clarity and give a lot more logical order of progression. We've also updated some terminology as well where appropriate, and this reflects current practices in business. So we've included things like flexible working, home working, and flexible hours, and this shows the different ways of working that we are now getting more familiar with. Some terminology has been changed, and as I said already, this aligns much better with the AS and A level business. And we've included things like income statements has changed to statement of profit or loss. Okay, and the final tab on here is the ratios and formulas. We've added these ratio formulas to the business syllabus to align much more with accounting, because obviously we have a lot of candidates who will take both, so that gives us that familiarity, and also with the AS and A-level business, and it's also going to support our teachers with their delivery of business. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the final slide I've got here, well, second to final slide, is the changes to assessment. We've mentioned already that the assessment objectives have been reworded. These been reworded to make them much more clearer. The changes align much more closely with accounting, economics at IGCSE level, and AS and A level business as well. The assessment objective weightings have been changed, and this gives much more opportunity for developed answers with greater contextual and critical thinking. In paper 1, we have changed, so we now have 4 parts instead of 5 parts. And so the breakdown of marks has changed, but overall the number of marks has still remained at 80. So previously, where we had 5 parts of 2 marks for 6 and 6, one of the 2 mark questions has been removed, and the 2 marks has been added to the second 6 mark question. As I said, the number of marks still remains the same, 80 marks for this paper. But once again, this allows for much more developed answers for our candidates. And paper 2, we've done all questions, part A questions, and now applied. The paper 2 mark scheme wording has changed, but the marking criteria stays largely the same. Once again, this gives greater emphasis on the application. Okay, next slide, please. So we are developing a range of resources to help teachers deliver the updated syllabus. My colleague Julia is going to talk in a bit more depth about Cambridge University Press and Assessment textbooks, as well as the supporting resources that will be available on the School Support Hub. So over to Julia.
Thank you, Sally. Hi, everyone. My name is Julia Fusey, and I'm the commissioning editor for the IGCSE and O-level business. So as Sally said, I'm going to talk to you about the resources that we have from Cambridge. So firstly, we do have the School Support Hub, which is our secure online site for teachers at Cambridge schools. So if you are a registered Cambridge school, you do have access to all the resources available on the Support Hub. It provides an array of curriculum support resources, and it is a great way to keep up to date with your subject and the global Cambridge community. You can use it to get in touch with other Cambridge teachers and experienced examiners through our online discussion forums, as well as finding out more about our professional development. So on the next slide, we have a snapshot of some of the resources available for IGCSE and O-level business. We have a scheme of work which provides medium-term teaching plans, a learner guide with useful advice to help learners plan their study and develop an understanding of the course, how it will be assessed and what to expect in the exams, as well as Resource Plus, which includes teaching packs, high-quality videos and animations, ready-made lesson plans and quizzes. But like I've said, this is just a snapshot of what's available on the Support Hub, as we do have other resources like example candidate responses, teaching tools, specimen paper answers. So I really do recommend that you go in there and see the wealth of resources that we have available on the School Support Hub. For our endorsed support, I am pleased to walk you through some of the new edition. So we are publishing the 4th edition of our IGCSE and O-level business, where we have, on the next slide, you'll see our new resources here, a course book with digital access, a workbook with digital access, and a teacher's resource, which comes bundled with a digital coursebook and workbook. And the coursebook is publishing tomorrow. So the 20th of March, the coursebook will be available. So we have updated the series with the workbook and teacher's resource following the same structure as the coursebook, so that all 3 resources can be used together. The content is split into 6 different sections. With the coursebook, it's endorsed for full syllabus coverage. So the coursebook has been updated to align to the syllabus for assessment 2027 with a new design, links to sustainability and video content. So now I'm going to walk through some of the new features of our 4th edition. So it has been updated to include more real-world application and provides additional engagement in class. So if you are familiar with the recently published A-level coursebook from Cambridge, you'll recognise the new features here. So we have business in context to introduce students to the content of the chapters, as well as business in action, which places key ideas into the real-world business settings, with opportunities for students to discuss, and they talk in small groups. We also have updated case studies, putting learning in a real-life business context. Many of the case studies do have an environmental angle, which reinforces the importance of environmental issues. We do also have case study videos, which can be accessed through the digital coursebook on Cambridge Go, and Leanne will be talking more about how to implement these later on. So here we can see that the coursebook encourages learner engagement with a range of activities which require thought, discussion, sharing of answers, as well as activities that really enable students to practice their knowledge, skills and understanding. There is a range of thought-provoking questions and discussions, along with these discussion topics here that learners can share with each other. We've also updated the design of the coursebook, allowing students to access content more easily and in a more visual way, including breaking down topics in a more accessible way too. So here you can see some examples of the book where we do have a lot of visual representation through different mind maps and graphs, etc. We have also updated the workbook. So let's take a look inside and see some of it here. The workbook is writing and it contains learning intentions at the start of each unit, which helps students to navigate through the workbook and to indicate important concepts for each chapter. The workbook activities are scaffolded to support progression through the course. The workbook also contains end of section practice questions, which includes the opportunity to evaluate sample answers and to apply advice to their own answers to questions, which again, this very much mimics the A-level resource that we have too, where they have challenges and look at how they can improve answers as well. Our brand new teachers resource is publishing soon, and as mentioned, this comes with access to the digital coursebook and a digital workbook as well. The teacher resource also follows the same structure as the coursebook and workbook, really allowing for the ease of planning. The resource gives advice on background information, which explains the prior knowledge required for students to access the chapter. So on the next slide, you can see an example of that. The teacher's resource also provides language support, which provides suggestions on how to support students who have English as an additional language. And it also gives advice on overcoming common misconceptions. It also provides ideas for your teaching with an array of starter activity ideas, main teaching ideas and plenaries, as well as suggestions on how to differentiate activities to support or challenge students. It also provides, as you can see here, assessment ideas as well. The teacher's resource also comes with downloadable material, including worksheets, but also advice on how to implement the new video content. I have only gone through some of the new features of the new edition, and we do have executive previews available if you would like to see them. You can contact your local sales representative. But I'm also going to talk to you about the professional development opportunities that we have here at Cambridge. So we do have several professional development for the IGCSE and O-level business. The best place to find out what we have coming up is to look at our professional development calendar on the website. You can filter by IGCSE and business to browse the list of upcoming courses. But please be aware that some of these will be more for the current syllabus, as this still has 2 more exam series to go. But we will be adding more courses soon. On the side, you can see some examples of the type of courses we have available. So we have the introduction course, which we strongly recommend for teachers who are new to Cambridge or to a new specific qualification. We have marking workshops, and this enables teachers to engage with recent candidate responses to build confidence in their understanding of the assessment criteria. We also have focus on assessment courses for teachers who want to understand the assessment of the syllabus in greater depth, as well as focus on teaching courses, which are for teachers who wish to explore a specific area of teaching and learning within the syllabus. These courses are recommended for teachers with at least 1 year experience teaching Cambridge programmes. All of these courses can be done either online or face-to-face depending. So I do recommend to always look at this before doing any bookings. Or please do get in touch with us or your local sales representative if you have any questions. And I'm really pleased to hand over to one of our coursebook authors, as well as the author of our teacher's resource, Leanne. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julia. Julia's explained to you the kind of suite of resources and given you some really good insight into how those could be used. What I'm going to do now is focus specifically on the coursebook and try to give you a little bit more of an indication about some of the changes that we've made and how you may be able to use some of these newly introduced parts of the book into your teaching. So next slide, please. Thank you. So first of all, we have worked really hard to bring you lots more up-to-date case studies based on obviously real life businesses. These are from all over the world, and there is a continued theme of sustainability throughout these case studies as well. In line with that, in terms of the content itself, this has been adapted quite significantly, both to make things more digestible for yourselves and the learners, as well as being in line with the new syllabus and the specific criteria that that has. In terms of the exact new features, you can see them listed on the slide there. So we've got business in action, videos, business in context, reflection, and check your progress. What I'm going to do now is take each one of those in turn and talk to you about what it is and how you could potentially use that feature as part of your teaching. So if we look at business in context, first of all, this comes at the start of each chapter, and the idea behind it is that it will focus on some of the key ideas that are introduced within the chapter itself. As with the case studies, it is based on a real life business scenario, and it's followed by some questions which will help to prompt discussion or activities as part of your lessons. So in terms of how to use this, as it's at the start of the chapter, a logical starting point would it be to use it as a starter activity for your lesson. The pupils could read it themselves, have a go at answering the questions. They could work in groups, or you could do class activities. This is also a useful opportunity for you as a teacher to use it as a baseline assessment to identify if pupils do have any prior knowledge of any of the concepts that might be considered in that chapter. I've got a couple of examples now from the Coursebook to look at. The first is a company called Sustainare. As you can see on this slide, there are two different questions that are identified. What does this business do differently from similar businesses, and what might be the advantage of Sustainare's approach to farming? So let's have a think about some specific ways that you could potentially use those questions as part of your teaching. Students could read the context themselves and be given the opportunity to ask questions about it. As this is the first time that they're going to have been introduced to the new content from that chapter, it may well be that there are certain words that they're unfamiliar with or things that they need clarifying before they're able to then go on to answer the questions. They could work in pairs or groups to discuss the questions. You could then ask a selection of groups to answer the questions, and then follow up by asking other groups if they agree with the answers provided. It's obviously okay if they don't, because that gives the opportunity for the students to be able to justify their reasons behind the answers that they've given. In terms of what you could do next after that, reading that business in context, they could then go on to think about examples of where different sectors might work together in the real world. There's a second example here, a company called AHA. Again, what we can see on the next, thank you, on the next slide is a couple of questions that can be used as part of the lesson. This case study is specifically focused on entrepreneurship. On the next slide, what we can see is some more ideas. So you could use the questions as a starter activity. And then what I've done here is thought about how this might lead into the rest of your lesson. So the learners could think about what makes an entrepreneur. They could do a think, pair, share activity. So they could think themselves, share those ideas with their partner, and then take those to the rest of the group. You could then in groups ask them to create a table identifying 4 or 5 characteristics and explain why each one of those might be helpful to an entrepreneur. In terms of thinking about any evaluation skills, they could then rank their characteristics from the most important down to the least and justify their answer. As a follow-up activity, perhaps as part of homework, they could research an entrepreneur and then present their findings to the class in the form of a poster or presentation. So that one kind of little snippet of 2 questions can actually go on to form the basis of the entire lesson, whereby they would have the opportunity to demonstrate the different assessment objectives. On the next slide, we have a little bit of an introduction to the videos. So these are short videos which can be used as part of your teaching and learning. Some of these videos are based on real life examples, and others are based on explaining part of the syllabus. So how to use these videos. It could be as part of a homework activity, so they could perhaps watch the videos at home as part of a flipped learning exercise, so they can come equipped to the lesson with some prior knowledge. Of course, you could use it as a lesson starter, and again, engage in tasks such as group tasks or the individual pair share activity. On the next slide, we do have a little bit of a sample of a clip. So if we could just watch this sample now before I talk through how we could use it.
Chapter 16. The expansion of Dunkin' Donuts. How important is it for businesses to adapt their marketing strategy?
Dunkin' Donuts is a multinational coffee and donut company which was founded in 1950. The objective of the business was to make and serve the most delicious coffee and donuts quickly in modern stores. Dunkin' Donuts became a franchise just 5 years later in 1955. During the next 20 years, over 100 Dunkin' Donuts stores opened across America. In 1970, the first overseas store was opened in Japan. Dunkin' Donuts expanded their product portfolio throughout the 1970s, bringing out new products to appeal to a wider range of customers. In 1980, Dunkin' Donuts made a big change to its marketing strategy. Until this point, they had offered only a takeaway service for their donuts and coffee. Now, customers could sit in to enjoy their coffee and donuts. They opened a new store in Bangkok, Thailand, with a capacity of 130 customers. 1997 saw a big change to the way Dunkin' Donuts advertised its products. This was the first time they used television adverts. This method of promotion meant they could...
Thank you so much. So at the start of that video, what we saw was a question that learners can think about whilst they're watching it. So just as a reminder, this question was, how important is it for a business to adapt its market and strategy? These questions are designed to give you something for the students to think about whilst they're watching the video. So it could be that they could create a mind map of kind of plotting down some ideas they have about how important it is, or you could do an activity such as give me 5. So give me 5 reasons why it's important. We haven't watched the entire video, but at the end of each video, there are then 2 summary questions, which again you can see on this slide here. The first, which change to Dunkin' Donuts market and strategy do you think was the riskiest and why? And then the second, what changes to price, product, promotion and place would you make to Dunkin' Donuts today, and explain your answer. So there's many ways that you could use these questions. First of all, you could ask them to write a 2-sentence answer which summarises their thought. If we think about that first question, it may be that they first of all come up with one change that they thought was the most riskiest. You may then ask them to choose another change and then try and justify that in the same way, because again, that's helping them to build up their justification skills, which will obviously be useful further down the line. In terms of thinking further and bringing in the different parts of theory together, you could then perhaps ask them to produce a marketing strategy and link that to other parts of the course, such as business objectives, finance, and so on. So if we move on to the next slide, we're now going to have a little bit of a think about the business in action feature.
Chapter 16. The expansion of Dunkin' Donuts.
So what is it? Quite similar to the business in context, what we've got is more focus again on real life businesses, again with that sustainability focus. What these are intended to do are to provide an insight into real life businesses and how some of these key concepts of the chapter have been applied to these businesses. So there's a short case study about a business issue, and once again with more questions that you can use as part of your teaching to prompt discussion. These questions are designed to encourage application and analysis skills, and the questions may go beyond the syllabus in certain instances. On the next slide, we'll think about how we can use these business in action features. As always, there's opportunity to use them as a group or a class activity. However, the nature of the business in action does mean that you have opportunity here to use them to review learning, to assess understanding of students from the content that you've gone through in the chapter. It could therefore be a plenary or consolidation activity, or it may be that the students answer the questions and hand them in as an exit ticket. That's really useful because you can then use that to have a look at the content of their answers before the next lesson, and that can help to indicate further focus for teaching in future lessons. On the next slide, we've got the first example of a business in action. So as you can see, it's a nice, concise case study with those questions listed. So on the next slide, again, we've got some ideas about how we can use it. The first question is about advantages of operating in a niche market. Now, obviously, that can be used as a standalone question, but that could be developed further into an extension opportunity where students could develop these advantages into chains of analysis. As Julia mentioned earlier, the teacher's resource has lots and lots of ideas about how you could use some of the key features of the coursebook as part of your wider lesson. The class could have a discussion of these advantages, and then they could be ranked, and a discussion could follow in terms of the reasons behind this. And again, you could then have a kind of bigger group activity where students could produce posters with suggestions about how Hive could increase sales and present them to the class. On the next slide, we've got a second example, which is Patagonia. And again, if we move on to the slide afterwards, please, we've got some ideas about how they could be used. Now, the first question here is, how might this decision affect other stakeholders? Well, you could dive straight into that question, or it could be an opportunity to recap who the stakeholder groups are. Can they be categorised into internal and external stakeholder groups? Different groups in your class could focus on these stakeholder groups and think about how each of those might be affected. If we look at question 2, again, there could be a summary, a 2-minute summary that could be presented to the class, and the students could think about why they perhaps have different reasons as to which stakeholder group should be the priority. The final business in action that I want to touch upon is one that does have some links to beyond the syllabus. So this is based on Hello Chef. So on the next slide, as we can see that question 2 is thinking specifically about business culture and whether this is something that you might consider when deciding which business to work for. This is beyond the syllabus, but this is a really useful thing to use as part of lessons sometimes because it can help students to be able to apply their business skills to a concept that they may not be familiar with, which really helps to develop those transferable skills. If we now move on to the reflection, this is a specific focus upon the development of skills specifically, which builds nicely from that previous point. This gives students the opportunity to think about how they've approached tasks, think about how well it's gone, and also consider how they may do things differently next time. On the next slide, we can see a specific example. Now, what you can see here is that the reflection you can see in green is specifically linked to that activity 23.4. And there are 3 open-ended questions which can be asked to the students to think about. So it's things such as, what did you learn from completing the activity? Did it encourage you to think about the statement of profit or loss? And can you think of any ways of memorising the formulae for calculating gross profit and profit? Again, these could be used as an exit ticket if the students answer and think about those questions individually, or they could perhaps do it as a pair or in a group, and they could use sticky notes to put their answers perhaps on the board. There is opportunity for you to use these example reflections and perhaps link them to the other activities or case studies, business in action context that are in the book. On the next slide, we've got a little example of how that could be done. Those 3 questions that we've just considered for activity 23.4 could be used and adapted for activity 23.3. So the first question could be adapted to, what did you learn in this activity? The second question, did it encourage you to think about the difference between cost of sales and expenses? And the third question, can you think of examples of cost and sales and expenses, and what will help you to remember the difference between the two. The way these questions have been written is that they are very open-ended, they are very, very reflective from the student's perspective, so it does open up lots of opportunities to use them in different ways during lessons. The final part that I'm going to talk about is the check your progress. This is something which comes at the very, very end of the chapter, and it gives opportunity to assess the student's understanding of that chapter with a breakdown of the desired learning outcomes that were given at the start. On the next slide, we can see an example of the check your progress. We've got those specific learning intentions, and students are asked to give themselves a score from 1 to 5. 5 is where they feel very confident. What's really nice about this is that they give an example of why they have given themselves the score that they have. There's lots of ways that this can be used. So an individual reflection as part of a plenary, it could be as part of a homework activity, it could be a discussion. But something I think is really nice is that the examples that students have given, they could share together in a group or as part of a class discussion. Further reflection can then be encouraged because students could think about how they might be able to improve the score that they have. So kind of what activities could they then do to improve their score moving forward. As a teacher, it's also really helpful as well because it can help you to provide areas to prioritise for revision or future teaching or perhaps homework tasks. I'm now going to pass back over to Laura. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much to Sally, Julia and Leanne for those fantastic presentations. It's very much appreciated to hear from our experts, and it's been great to hear about all the syllabus changes and updates to the teaching and learning resources. It's great to hear about how the subject content has been updated to reflect the modern and changing world, and to have examples of real businesses in the teaching and learning resources as well. And to hear from Leanne about how you can use the different features in the course books and to look at some different examples of how these features complement each other and support students to build the knowledge and skills that they need. I would like to say another huge thank you to Sally, Leanne, Julia, Mehdi and Jen for putting together such a fantastic webinar today. And just finally as well, when the webinar ends, you will see that a short survey will pop up for you to complete. If you can let us know your feedback on the session, that would be really helpful so that we can continue to improve these sessions for you going forwards. So thank you so much for joining us today. Good luck with your teaching and goodbye for now.